Hello and welcome to this special election day broadcast by ThePrint. We are watching the results of the Karnataka elections and the initial trends are coming in. The postal ballots are coming in, still very close and very neck to neck, and we will not go out and make any predictions before the time is correct. Joining us on this special broadcast is our correspondent from Karnataka, Sharan Poovanna. Hi Sharan, good morning. Our correspondent here in Delhi, Shanker, Arnimesh, who covers the BJP. I am Ishadrita, Lahiri, and also a very, very special guest joining us, Professor Narendar, Pani, who is a political analyst from Karnataka. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Good morning.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Sharan and Professor Pani, first I'll come to both of you. We were just discussing before this started that on this day, all BJP leaders and most leaders actually, the first thing they do, first course of action in the morning is visiting temples. So who do you think is going to be blessed today from what you guys are hearing on the ground? Sharan, you first.
We've seen this, on polling day. We've seen this on nomination filing day, and of course on results day. We see Lingayat leaders running to temples. We've seen DK Shivakumar, Bommai, visuals of them going to temples also. Keeps flowing in. But it's, everyone's seeking divine help, and we just have to wait for a few more hours to see who really actually got the blessing. But Professor Pani probably will be able to tell us why they run to temples so frequently.
शरण बप्पा का आशीर्वाद किसको मिलेगा? हमारे स्वामी सिंगापुर से सीधा मंदिर चले गए, बीजेपी चीफ मिनिस्टर मुंबई गए, तो आशीर्वाद किसको मिलेगा बप्पा का?
बप्पा का आशीर्वाद अभी देखना पड़ेगा कि किसको मिलेगा बप्पा का आशीर्वाद, लेकिन अभी तो मतलब हर कोई डिवाइडेड है कि कहाँ कैसे जाएगा. बीजेपी लीडर्स साउंड कॉन्फिडेंट, कांग्रेस लीडर्स साउंड very confident. In fact, the JDS has not really lost its confidence, even though we can see that they're finally coming back to reality and not some 120 plus numbers. But देखना पड़ेगा. I mean, say a few hours from now we'll know for sure. But right now, the counting centers have just opened, and people are just rushing in, there's checking, and this little initial hoopla is there, and of course TV channels are going to be playing up a lot more on leads and everything. But I think around noon is when the trend might be a little more clear.
Professor Pani or Sharan is not allowed to make predictions because he's a journalist, so I'll put him out of that situation. But you can actually. So what is it that you are hearing from the ground based on the campaign and what you heard on voting day?
What you're hearing from the ground?
प्रोफेसर, इनिशियल जो ट्रेंड है उससे भी थोड़ा हम अपने व्यूअर को दिखा दें या बता दें, इन्फॉर्म कर दें. जो इनिशियल ट्रेंड है, जो पोस्टल बैलेट, जो सबसे पहले जो शुरुआत होती है पोस्टल बैलेट की, उसमें फिलहाल कांटे की टक्कर है, लेकिन कांग्रेस का एज है. कांग्रेस लीड कर रही है पोस्टल बैलेट में, और खास करके पोस्टल बैलेट में अक्सर देखा गया है देश के अलग अलग हिस्सों में, जब असेंबली का इलेक्शन हो या पार्लियामेंट्री इलेक्शन हो, बीजेपी को लीड मिलती है. लेकिन इस बार कर्नाटक में पोस्टल बैलेट में कम से कम कांग्रेस की लीड है. लेकिन ये देखना होगा, कई बार हमने देखा है कि बीजेपी के दफ्तर में या कांग्रेस के दफ्तर में लड्डू शुरू हो जाता है, पटाखे. कांग्रेस के दफ्तर में तो पटाखे फूटने शुरू भी हो गए हैं, और 1-1.5 घंटे के बाद वो सारा कुछ जो लड्डू खरीद के लाए जाते हैं वो पीछे भेज दिया जाता है, क्योंकि नतीजे तब तक पलट चुके होते हैं. तो अभी जो पोस्टल बैलेट के नतीजे हैं उसमें कांग्रेस की लीड है. अगर हम अलग अलग चैनलों के और खासकर जो डेटा हैं उसमें अगर बात करें तो 87 सीट पर कांग्रेस की लीड दिख रही है, जबकि बीजेपी 72 सीट पे बीजेपी की लीड है. इलेक्शन कमीशन का जो नतीजा कहता है उसमें बहुत ही अभी शुरुआती नतीजे बिल्कुल पीछे हैं, लेकिन पोस्टल बैलेट में कांग्रेस की लीड दिख रही है. या प्रोफेसर?
I think this would postal ballots would fit in broadly with what one is hearing on the ground, and also what the voting percentages showed in the exit polls. The exit polls we need to see as two separate exercises. One is estimating the vote share, and the other is converting the vote share into seats. Converting vote share into seats is something that is a tricky business in Karnataka for a variety of reasons, including dispersion, divergences, etc. But the vote share, those surveys that have given the vote shares have given the Congress an advantage. That's the only information we have apart now from the postal ballot information. And at this time, to stick your neck out and say who's going to win and be, it's quite risky, considering you'll know in a couple of hours.
So you didn't fall for my bait. Sir, what are the key issues really that you think would turn this election? Like in the run-up to the campaign, we have seen Congress really take up the 40% Sarkara issue big time. But really on the ground, we have seen their outreach to the Lingayats. But on the ground, what do you think are the issues that will really, I mean, whichever way it goes for the Congress or the BJP, what are the issues that are going to turn it for either party?
See, one, like any election in which a sitting government is participating, it is a statement on incumbency. Whether it is for or against, the vote will be that. But what is more interesting this time is that the two parties took diametrically opposite approaches to the election. The BJP was completely centralized to the point where the Prime Minister's roadshow did not even have the candidates anywhere near him. And the Home Minister had made a statement at one point when introducing a candidate that don't vote for him, your vote is for Modi. I mean, so the whole approach was highly centralized. The Congress, on the other hand, went completely decentralized. The initial campaign was led by Siddaramaiah and Shiv Kumar. And even later, I think even on the final day of campaigning, there was a press conference scheduled with Rahul Gandhi, but it was called off. So the focus remained on state level leaders. So at one level, it's also a question of the national versus the local. There are also, if you're looking at the details, there are also other issues. Will the BJP manage to break into the Vokliga areas? Without that, it can never get a majority. Even when it does well, it will be the single largest party. But unless it breaks into these areas, it won't get a majority. What is the impact of the Bajrang Dal campaign? Particularly if you look at coastal Karnataka, where the BJP is very strong. If the BJP loses any seats there, then we have to consider whether aggressive extreme Hindutva, there's some fatigue around it. So these are issues. And of course, there are the defectors. There are 17 defectors, all of whom or their family members have got seats. And it's interesting to see whether they get endorsed or not by the electorate.
शंकर, आपके पास आना चाहूंगी. जो प्रोफेसर साहब कह रहे थे कि बीजेपी का कैंपेन जो इस दौरान में रहा है बहुत ही मोदी सेंट्रिक रहा है, बहुत ही सेंट्रल लीडरशिप हैवी रहा है, एज अपोज टू द कांग्रेस जिनका कैंपेन बहुत हाइपर लोकल रहा है. अब ये हमने हिमाचल में भी देखा था, गुजरात में भी देखा था. सेंट्रल पुश गुजरात में काम कर गया क्योंकि नरेंद्र मोदी जी का स्टेट है. लेकिन व्हाट वाज द रीजन कि बीजेपी इस तरफ से गई? उनको क्या स्टेट लीडरशिप में भरोसा नहीं था इस बार, या फिर क्या रीजन था कि सरकार होने के बावजूद एक ऐसे सेंट्रल पुश के साथ कैंपेन में गई बीजेपी?
देखिए, बीजेपी हर उस स्टेट में जो असेसमेंट करती है कि अगर उनके खिलाफ बहुत ज्यादा एंटी इनकम्बेंसी है तो उनकी स्ट्रैटेजी होती है कि उस इलेक्शन को स्टेट इलेक्शन की जगह वो नेशनल इलेक्शन की तरह उसको टर्न कर दें. तो वैसी स्थिति में उनको ये पता होता है कि मोदी की अक्रॉस स्टेट में पॉपुलैरिटी है. और अगर आप कर्नाटक के जो एग्जिट पोल भी देखें और कई सारे पोल, उसमें जो वोटर से पूछा गया तो 19% और 20% वोटर ने ये कहा कि वो मोदी पॉपुलर है और मोदी के लिए वोट कर रहे हैं. यानी कि बीजेपी वहां पे गॉन है, बीजेपी के लिए वोट नहीं कर रहे, वो मोदी के लिए वोट कर रहे हैं. तो बीजेपी इस बात को समझती है कि मोदी की पॉपुलैरिटी हर एक स्टेट में है और अगर किसी स्टेट में एंटी इनकम्बेंसी को बच करना है, एंटी इनकम्बेंसी से इलेक्शन को आगे ले जाना है, तो मोदी की पॉपुलैरिटी इलेक्शन को सेंट्रलाइज कर दो. आपने देखा कि कर्नाटक में मोदी के बड़े बड़े कटआउट लगे हुए थे. सारे न्यूज़पेपर के एडवर्टीजमेंट में प्राइम मिनिस्टर के फोटो थे और छोटे छोटे ब्रैकेट में येदियुरप्पा और बोम्मई के फोटो थे. तो उसका सिर्फ ये स्ट्रैटेजी थी कि इलेक्शन को नेशनल इलेक्शन में तब्दील कर दो. बोम्मई सरकार के कामकाज, इवन येदियुरप्पा के बहुत सारे जो अच्छे कामकाज थे उस पे भी रैली में बहुत कम बोला गया. ज्यादातर जो बोला गया कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की जो स्कीम्स हैं, उज्ज्वला, इसके अलावा कोविड के दौरान क्या किया गया, तो एक तरह से इलेक्शन को नेशनल इलेक्शन में तब्दील करने की कोशिश थी. लेकिन ये देखिए, ये फैक्टर तभी काम करता है उन स्टेट में. आपने देखा कि हिमाचल में काम नहीं किया, इससे पहले झारखंड में काम नहीं किया, दिल्ली में काम नहीं किया, जहां पर आपकी अगर स्टेट लीडरशिप मजबूत हो, स्टेट लीडरशिप के ऊपर एंटी इनकम्बेंसी बहुत ज्यादा नहीं हो, आपका नैरेटिव चल रहा हो. तो कर्नाटक में नैरेटिव बीजेपी के अगेंस्ट था, वहां पे करप्शन के जो चार्जेस लगे थे. स्टेट लीडरशिप में येदियुरप्पा तो आपके पास थे, लेकिन बोम्मई कहीं ना कहीं आपके एक कमजोर विकेट थे. तो इसलिए अगर बीजेपी वहां पे खराब परफॉर्म करती है, हालांकि इससे टू अर्ली, अगर बीजेपी खराब परफॉर्म करती है तो उसके पीछे ये सारे फैक्टर होंगे कि किस तरह से स्टेट की यूनिट की जो अपनी प्रॉब्लम्स थी उसकी वजह से वो इलेक्शन को ड्राइव नहीं कर सके प्राइम मिनिस्टर अपनी पॉपुलैरिटी के बाद भी. लेकिन शरण, आपसे मैं जानना चाहूंगा कि जो जगदीश शेखर की जो इनिशियल ट्रेंड्स आ रहे हैं, जो पोस्टल बैलेट के ट्रेंड्स हैं, इसको हमें बहुत सीरियसली नहीं लेना चाहिए, लेकिन इनिशियल जो ट्रेंड है उस पर जगदीश शेखर पीछे चल रहे हैं. इसका क्या कारण माना जाएगा? जो बीएल संतोष ने पूरी अपनी एनर्जी लगा दी थी जगदीश शेट्टर को हराने में, और जिस कैंडिडेट को खड़ा किया गया था वो बीएल संतोष का काफी करीबी व्यक्ति है, तो क्या ये ट्रेंड कहता है कि डिफेक्टर्स जो हैं उनको जनता ने पनिश किया, या फिर उस इलाके में जगदीश शेट्टर बीजेपी वहां पे जो बीजेपी का जो ग्रासरूट लेवल था वो ज्यादा मजबूत था?
I don't know if you can, classify the defectors and Jagdish Shettar together, because Jagdish Shettar holds that he was forced out of the party, and circumstances forced him out of the party. Jagdish Shettar, as we've heard before, there were initial surveys by the BJP that indicated that he might lose. Then there were Congress surveys also that suggested that he might lose. But what has happened is his constant rubbing of the fact that he was sidelined, and B.L. Santosh's name coming up again and again, Prahlad Joshi's name coming up again and again. Now, this may have helped him gather some sympathy. Now, Jagdish Shettar is from the Lingayat community, is not considered one of their tallest Lingayat leaders. And also his sphere of influence did not really go beyond his constituency. Now, there may be a few pockets that he might be slightly influential, but their ends. I mean, his winning will only mean he won in his constituency. It does not have any other effect. But when you look at, let's say, a Lakshman Savdi is somebody who's been used many times by the BJP in the past in order to influence Lingayat votes, not just in Karnataka's Belgaum and Bagalkot region, but also across the border in Maharashtra. So there are some, he has some influence. So early trends indicate, or the people we've been speaking to on the ground also indicate, Shettar is still, touch and go. But Savdi, they say, has a much better chance, because Savdi has positioned himself in a manner to state that he has been a victim of targeting, of concerted targeting by, XYZ leaders. And he cried when he said, I want to leave. And also the day he wanted to leave the party, or rather, the decision that he wanted to take was attended by about 35,000 people in Athens. He actually asked the people, he placed 3 questions before the people, said, should I stay as MLC? Should I leave the BJP? Should I contest as an independent? And it was the people that gave him, or rather it was given, we are led to believe that he actually took the decision of the people, where he said he will actually move to the Congress. So the defectors, or rather the turncoats, and Lakshman Savdi and Jagdish Shettars cannot be put together. The turncoats are people who have won their elections irrespective of their parties. Now you have Ramesh Jarkioli, you have Sudhakar, and several others who have won based on only themselves. And then you have, people who win because of the BJP symbol. Now, when you look at the two, Shettar and Savdi seem like they are now slowly, catching the Congress wave, if any. The turncoats, on the other hand, are still relying on their own names in order to win, or, however they want to influence the votes. It's basically based on their own individual brands and not necessarily because of the BJP. Because Ramesh Jarkioli, they say, can contest from any party, but will still win in Goka. So it is him.
Sharan, before I bring in Professor, I wanted to ask you about the coastal area and the Bajrang Dal issue. And you have been there, you've done a fantastic ground report from there. Now, the Congress's contention is that the counter polarization is going to benefit them. And at least that's what they're saying officially, that, of course, we have done a story on what went behind putting that in the manifesto. But the Congress's contention is that there's going to be counter polarization, and that the Muslim votes that would have probably gone to the JDS, all of them are going to come together and consolidate behind the Congress. So when you were traveling on the ground, what was the sense that you got? Of course, from your report, what we understood is that the Bajrang Dal came in actively after this announcement was made, and they got into the election, and before that they were not. So what do you have to say about the Congress's contention that this is how it's going to work, and what did you see on the ground?
I'll answer that in 2 parts. As in, one is the Bajrang Dal's view of it. The Bajrang Dal, yes, they were very muted. Unless a Modi, it's a Modi election, the Bajrang Dal really doesn't get that involved. But the second, the Congress at Bajrang Dal, then they all activated. They went on poster campaigns. They started mobilizing people and, started telling people that stop voting for the Congress. This is what's going to happen. But then the Congress wasn't that worried, because people who generally vote for the Bajrang Dal are not going to change their vote irrespective of anything. So that was a very small constituency that the Congress said that, okay, we are going to perform badly in the coastal, or we don't have high expectations from the coast. Hence, this move will affect us in the coast to this extent. But what it actually does across Karnataka, or rather, according to Congress leaders in at least 50 constituencies, is that it consolidates the Muslim vote. Now you have parties like the SDPI, AIMIM, then the JDS, and then you have a few more independents who are also, going hard at Muslim votes. But what the Bajrang Dal issue does is consolidate them and give them reason to believe that the Congress is the best bet for us to fight the BJP. Now, this helps them in a lot of places. There are many Muslim-dominated areas. Muslims account for a very big number of the votes in several constituencies across Karnataka. So it has helped them in many places. The Congress's calculation that, okay, we may not do very well in the coast, this may not be very well received in the coast, but this is an area we are not very strong in. But the same thing would help us in at least 50 other constituencies, is the kind of strategy they went forward with.
Professor, if you could please also weigh in.
No, I just wanted to come in on that. There's one other aspect of going with this Bajrang Dal element that links up to the larger campaign strategy, that essentially the Congress has gone with a welfarist strategy. There are 5 welfare schemes that they've put right up front and they're focused on it. And by raising the Bajrang Dal issue, they prevented the BJP from coming into a comparative welfare scheme battle. They kept the focus on the Bajrang Dal. The BJP went for the Bajrang Dal. It sort of suited them ideologically, and they pushed on that. As a net result, there wasn't a single counter welfare scheme offered by the BJP by the end of the campaign. And that was surprising, because normally you would come up with something. If a party is putting up 5 major schemes like this, you would come up with something to sort of suggest that you're not completely ignoring that aspect. The BJP didn't do any of that. And I think the Bajrang Dal was a kind of a bait which the BJP may have fallen for.
Professor, I want to ask one counter question. In every state where BJP won election, there was one major factor of beneficiary schemes. 4 crore toilets, 3 crore Ujjwala gas cylinder, Prime Minister housing scheme. These all beneficiary schemes work in other states. But why it is not working in Karnataka? If BJP lose election, why Congress 5 guarantee? People taken Congress 5 guarantee more seriously than BJP beneficiary scheme? Or delivery mechanism there was a loophole in delivery mechanism in Karnataka?
You see, the fact is that there is also an effort to what they think is make the systems more efficient, which means a lot of people who are beneficiaries earlier are no longer beneficiaries. Even something like the ration card, the number of people who have been taken off the rolls of the ration card, you're presenting it as an efficiency scheme, removing false cases, etc. But for the people who are actually stuck in it, it means that they'll suddenly lose all benefits and they become very sensitive to an increase in price. If I'm getting a free cylinder, it's fine. But now if I'm going to pay 1,000 rupees for it, I just go back to firewood. So in actual practice, this is the issue, exposing them to the market, even when you're offering it as a starting point. But once they no longer get it for a variety of reasons, and you're all the while thinking you're making the system more efficient, but in actual fact, you're excluding. You see, there was a time when government would say it does not matter if some of those who don't deserve it get it, as long as all who deserve it are not missed. Today, it's the reverse. You think it does not matter if some of those who deserve it are left out, as long as there's nobody undeserving who gets it. And that's a result of which that's quite a large chunk who actually need it, particularly agricultural labor. Suddenly their fingerprint won't work. And as you grow older and you get a cataract, your eye, the iris also doesn't work. You have serious problems on the ground when you get into these things. And that could be a problem. Then if you have at the same time gone in for a massive increase in gas, that takes it completely out of their range.
But how does a party actually go on, go about implementing such a scheme where you're looking at, giving 2,000 rupees per household, or, per the woman in the household? How do you actually go about the scheme, Professor?
It would have to be ration card based, is my guess. I don't know. I'm not aware of how the Congress has planned this out. But my guess is it would be ration card based. And Kerala has, I think, that the ration cards for the household are sort of based on the woman. So that would be that could be the route, but I don't know. I'm not privy to how they intend doing it.
So also, I want to ask you about, the Lingayat, vote base. And we've seen in 2018 as well, where there was, the Lingayats are actually said that they will back Siddaramaiah for giving them the minority religion status. But it didn't go that way at all. Until the last day, we were given to believe that all the Mathadishas and everyone will back the Congress. This time too, there was very late mobilization, of course, but then they say it is a deeper problem that started well before 2019. Which way do you think the Lingayats go, and what do you think will determine whether they will stay with the BJP or move with the Congress?
My own feeling is that the Lingayat issue now is not so much about a specific benefit here or there. It is a question of whether they are expected to be completely subjugated to a national party or whether they retain their autonomy. You see, you must remember that these are institutions that have been there. I mean, Sutur Matta claims to have been there for 1,000 years. Even the Siddhaganga for 600 years. I mean, these are institutions that have seen various types of power, from the colonial power to any other forms of power, Vijayanagar, etc. So they recognize that power is temporary and they will not give up their autonomy. So I think if the Lingayats, I don't know whether it will turn out to be true, but if the Lingayats have abandoned or moved away from the BJP this time, it will be simply because you have not you have sort of eaten into the autonomy that the Matts have held over centuries.
Now, Professor, I had a few questions for actually both you and Sharan, and final few questions before we end. So when I was traveling on the ground, it seemed like there were certain issues which the Delhi media projected as poll issues, but it probably did not play out that way on the ground, like Tipu Sultan, for example. So my question specifically is for two separate issues that were that played out during the election, which is Tipu Sultan and Amul versus Nandini. So, Professor, how do you see these two issues? Do you, I mean, as per your understanding, did they have resonance at all? Or again, as I said, there were issues that the media was talking about, that the Delhi media was talking about, but on the ground, they weren't really poll issues at all.
Tipu was not an issue, whereas Nandini was, and let me explain why. You see, Tipu's, I mean, whether people like Tipu or not is not based on religion. It is based upon a particular land system he followed, where certainly there were groups that were middle level, whether in Kodagu or in Malabar, where the middle level, the old, what you would call a landlord, that class could not accept his land reform, which was basically based on dealing directly with the peasant. Whereas in old Mysore, where that existed, where the system existed and continued even in the colonial period afterwards, and that system was consolidated, there remains a respect for Tipu. The temples he has contributed to, the fact that he sent his army to protect the Sringeri Mutt against the Marathas, you can get a lot of things. The point is that he was an 18th century ruler using the brutal ways of the 18th century, and where he was liked, he was a hero. Where he went against local interest, he was a villain who will remember for centuries. That's the situation on the ground. To convert it into something that in Vokliga area, which is old Mysore, where Tipu is seen as somebody who changed the land systems in a way that benefited everybody, right? If you're looking at the massacre in Bangalore in 1791, you're talking about Vokligas and Muslims dying together. So these are old history. To try and break that is difficult, and I don't think from what impression, the fact that the BJP itself dropped it later suggests that it didn't work. The issue of Nandini, on the other hand, is fundamentally different. People are being forced out of agriculture, and the only thing that they have to rely on is dairying in many of these areas. And that they want control over. It's a matter of autonomy. And if some other cooperative is going to get control over it, or even the fear that some other cooperative will get control over it, is something that strikes a chord. And it is that I think the Congress identified, spotted, and built it into a campaign tool. And I think that has had some resonance, but Tipu has not.
Professor, one more question from me. Whether in initial trend, एक बार अपने व्यूअर को ये भी बता दें कि जो शुरुआती रुझान है उसमें एक तरह से कांग्रेस बहुमत के नजदीक पहुंच गई है। 111 सीटों पर कांग्रेस की लीड है इस समय। 113 का जो मैजिक नंबर चाहिए बहुमत के लिए कर्नाटक में। बीजेपी 82 सीटों पर 82 सीट पर शुरुआती जो पोस्टल बैलेट के रुझान है उसमें आगे चल रही है। तो कांग्रेस मेजॉरिटी के बहुत पास है। लेकिन आपको लगता है कि ये जो पूरा कर्नाटक का इलेक्शन था, it was election of caste or class, economic difficulties, gas cylinder issue, localized election, local issue was
Right.
dominant in price rise, inflation. It was a dominant in whole narrative. It was not election of caste. Chief Minister Bommai has implemented caste rigid formula in last month of March. So it was essentially election of localized issue, local issue.
I think that in Karnataka's politics, the separation of caste and class is becoming very difficult. The successful, even the most modern and successful industries like information technology, if you're willing to put the caste lens on it, patterns are clear. You will not miss that. So the fact is that the two get fairly closely linked, and it is the backward castes and the Muslims who have been at the receiving end of what can be seen as a class issue. So the two get merged. The separation doesn't happen. And so when you look at Siddaramaia's politics, for instance, most of the upper caste people as well as the upper class people find his image something they cannot stomach. They instinctively don't like that image. But on the ground, I think the CSDS survey has shown that he's by far the most popular leader across parties. So I think the two get merged. It's separation of caste and class is not very useful in Karnataka.
All right.
तो शरद चीफ मिनिस्टर कौन बनेगा? डीके शिव कुमार या सिद्धरमैया या कुमारस्वामी तो अपने सारे हसीन सपने 2 दिनों में पाल रखे होंगे कि हमारी जरूरत पड़ेगी, आई विल बी द किंग मेकर और चीफ मिनिस्टर पिछली बार की तरह मैं बन जाऊंगा. आपको क्या लगता है, क्या गट्स कहते हैं इनिशियल ट्रेंड के बाद?
We are constantly putting Sharan on the spot.
So that's the thing. So we've been told that assuming that the Congress does get a majority, then the government's not going to be formed on the 14th, because there are still multiple levels of negotiations that have to happen, because everyone's looking at DK Shiv Kumar and then there's Siddaramaiah. But then there are many other players. There's Parmeshwar, there's MB Patil, then there's, of course, the dark horse that everyone believes Mr. Kharge is also there. And so it's not going to be that easy, just because they get or cross a magic number, a certain threshold, does not mean that somebody will, from these names only can become chief minister. We've seen that happen in the past. Of course, the biggest stakeholders or the biggest claimants to that particular seat right now is DK Shiv Kumar, because of course, he's the party president. And if the Congress does really well, it will be directly under him. Then, of course, you have a Siddaramaiah, who's a mass leader, who's also claiming that chair. And then he has 5 years before where he said that, I've done so many things and, my government had so many benefits and everything. So, yeah, it's not that easy to say who's going to be the chief minister. But yes, I mean, everyone's going with the most probable thing that if it's a hung assembly, then it's going to be Kumaraswamy. But somehow this time that may not be completely true, because they say that if the Congress has numbers very close, if they end up just short of the majority, then Kumaraswamy will not be given the chief minister, but will be asked for support at best. But all of these are negotiations that are still going on, when only the final numbers can tell us who can or will, become the chief minister. But that's many days from now. It is not something that will be decided today.
All right, Sharan, here's hoping that you don't have to spend the next few days outside some resort trying to figure out.
That's the only that we can only hope.
Trying to figure out who's going where. Thank you so much, Professor Pani, for joining us. Sharan, Shankar, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be back in
Professor.
hours when the results are clearer, and hopefully by then we'll have a clearer answer to who is going to be forming government in Karnataka, or if it's going to be a hung assembly. We'll ask Sharan again to tell us who is the possible chief ministerial contender. As of now, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back with more results and more updates.
Thank you.